think it's really important, especially with looking at Black women's writing of not only the 19th century, but just kind of across history, of thinking about all the obstacles that they faced and getting their ideas and their kind of labor recognized. And so thinking specifically about Cooper, you see moments where she might have only published 2 or 3 books, but then she did so much more writing than that. And so it makes you question, like, what am I missing from her story? And so I think the significance is looking at kind of all of the barriers she faced with even publishing her work, or the barriers she faced in being able to hold down a job while she's getting her PhD. So like all of these things that I think humanizes figures that we learn about in history class, or maybe a lot of times we don't learn about, and we kind of have like our own families to kind of fill in the gaps of Black history. But looking at those moments where she's kind of seeing the breadth of her work that isn't always as apparent. And so I think that's why digital archival research as well as transcription projects really help us to like broaden, like not just seeing the symbol of the figure, but also thinking about like who were they as a person, who were the people that they were in contact with, how do we humanize them so they don't just become this like abstract figure that we know maybe 1 or 2 things about, but we don't know anything about their personal lives.
I mean, I think there's a lot of information that is really centered on white straight men coming from Europe to America, doing things in America. And I think we're losing a lot of information about the sort of normal average people in American history and European history, and thinking about this as a sort of history from below question in some ways. What did it look like to be a Black woman in the early 20th century is a really crucial question. And it's one that we're just starting to reckon with, 100 years on from women's suffrage and maybe 40 years on from the Civil Rights Amendment where all Black people were allowed the right to vote. I think there's a lot of potential for people to start to really engage with this material more than they have previously. Lots of it is not digitized, lots of it is not made easily accessible. This project has the potential to make tons and tons of resources really well available in ways that we haven't been able to play with before. That strikes me as being a really potentially useful thing. And secondly, the thing that I have really found most meaningful about this work is that it's about thinking through American history's past in a way that is very, very real. This is someone who lived in DC. We can go visit her house. We can go see all these things, and yet so few of us know very much about her.
On the one hand, we're creating a new legacy online of Anna Julia Cooper's papers and allowing for a whole new generation of scholars, students, and members of the community and various communities to access Cooper's papers. On the other hand, we're modeling a type of public sphere and public intellectual engagement as a community that puts scholars on a much more even playing field or parallel playing field with the broader American cultures. What makes Douglass Day so exciting as a historian is I'm getting to teach everyday Americans about how to engage with historical documents, transcribe them, and really create a new legacy for Anna Julia Cooper into the 21st century and beyond.
I think that is very important even in this day and age of kind of retrieving or returning back to those moments where people were alive and making sure those voices are not, erased or deleted or anything, like just re-emerging Black women's voices in history is very important.
So for me, this project is significant for teaching about history that doesn't get taught often enough, specifically like Black women's history. I think, when I was in school, we really didn't get taught this history at all, and so I think it's important that Black history is not just relegated to 1 month out of the year, but that we really have a more expansive, more comprehensive version of history that includes different histories that have traditionally been shut out. And so that's why it's important for me, but I also think that that's something a lot of people can get behind, hopefully. And hopefully that's why people are coming out on Douglass Day, and that's why I really like the community aspect of it, because I do think that's important that we sort of work together to help institutionalize a lot of this history that has traditionally not been represented enough.
Working on Black history has been really important for my own research, and I joined the project because the digital aspect has been so crucial, especially to me, coming from Singapore, having access to online collections, to archives that were digitized, was the only way I could really work on things that people and collections from this field. So we are going to Anna Julia Cooper's archives. We're transcribing her work for maybe someone else in Singapore who work on Anna Julia Cooper or someone else from around the world. And I think it's so important recovering Black history, finding these voices and these stories.
I think it's really important that as a community, as a society, we always reflect on our history and the things that may be relevant today that are not too far from the past. And I think that the work of Douglas and Cooper is really important and salient as we go forward, because there are lessons that can be learned that we not necessarily as a society have learned, that we might have to reflect on and continue going forward. And just the influence that it has on our society, going forward today. All of the struggles and the things that our forefathers and forewomen went through are things that we should not be forgotten. As we navigate our days and navigate PWIs, all of that is relevant, as to how people engage with us, how we engage with others, and the opportunities that we're given.
So the Anna Julia Cooper Digital Project is a community-based digital history project that is very intentional about engaging different audiences in bringing to life and kind of bringing back together the scattered archive of Anna Julia Cooper. The project started really from thinking about how Black women's intellectual work takes place in so many different spaces that don't always get recognized in conventional publishing. So, in diaries, in letters, in journals, in scrapbooks. And so a lot of the project was thinking about how do we re-engage those works? How do we make them available to different audiences? How do we get students working with them? How do we create new audiences for them? So that was some of the thinking behind the founding of the Anna Julia Cooper Digital Project. And I think that the reason people should get involved in the project is it really speaks to the community-based ethos that Cooper herself believed in. She felt that it was the role of the people in the community to advocate for and to take action for and to support their own work and to support each other. Well, they were doing a lot of other things too, but that was really central to it. And so I think this is a chance for us to honor that that kind of mission that Cooper herself had. And so I think other people should be involved in this project because they have a chance to help preserve Black women's history. They have a chance to learn not only about what that work meant in the past, but what it means today.
Certain people are not as recognized as others. Anna Julia Cooper being one of those people who, like I said, wasn't taught in schools per se. We learn more about W.E.B. Du Bois or Martin Luther King, for example, but we don't necessarily learn about the people who are technically, quote unquote, behind the scenes, or who are doing work alongside of these people. People should come out and participate on Douglas Day just so they can be a part of making sort of this history that isn't as recognized available and more accessible to a wider audience. Creating a digital archive from these sort of materials will help people around the globe, potentially, whoever is maybe making some research projects or even wants to learn more about sort of other Black historical figures.